Security cameras outside a medical clinic in Brazil captured a robbery that quickly spiraled into chaos. A young motorcyclist arrived and parked near the entrance. Second later, another motorcycle pulled in behind him, carrying two men. One of them noticed a man sitting inside a parked car nearby. That man was an off-duty police officer. Soon after, two more attackers arrived, surrounding the victims and increasing the threat. One robber approached with his hand on his waist, pretending to be armed. The officer raised his hands to show cooperation. The motorcyclist was forced off of his bike, and his helmet was ripped away. The officer was dragged out of his car and shoved toward the clinic door. The criminals pushed and searched both men, trying to take the motorcycle. During the struggle, the bike tipped over, and that mistake changed everything. The officer realized the attackers were not armed. The motorcyclist blocked them from taking the bike. A fight broke out, and one attacker's motorcycle was kicked over. The criminals panicked and began to run. That was the moment the officer acted. He ran back to his car, grabbed his firearm, and fired at the fleeing attackers. They scattered in different directions. One was hit but escaped. The motorcyclist later returned to collect his bike and hugged the officer, grateful to be alive. On a sidewalk in Paraná, Brazil, two workers stood outside a business, distracted by a phone. A man walked toward them calmly, blending in with everyday foot traffic. Without warning, he reached into his pants and pulled out a long rifle. He pressed it into one man's chest and demanded valuables. The victims froze and handed over their belongings. The robber believed that he had complete control. What he didn't know was that someone had already contacted the police. The criminals stayed in the area too long, and minutes later, officers arrived nearby. When the robber noticed them, he immediately dropped the stolen items and tried to flee. Police split up to handle multiple suspects. One officer chased and detained the armed man, while others searched for his accomplice. Store employees confirmed the suspect's identity. Both criminals were eventually taken into custody, and the rifle was recovered. In São Bernardo do Campo, a couple stepped out of their blue car in what seemed like a calm moment. The wife exited first, walking slowly toward the back of the vehicle. As her husband followed, a man wearing a motorcycle helmet rushed in and pointed a gun at him. Another attacker searched through the car. The husband, a retired police officer, was shaken down and forced to hand over his watch. The couple cooperated, hoping the robbers would leave, but the situation escalated when the officer reached into the car and grabbed his firearm. A gunfight broke out at close range. The officer fired multiple shots while the attackers returned fire. One bullet struck the officer in the arm, causing severe bleeding. Glass shattered as bullets flew through the car windows. Despite being injured, the officer continued firing until the attackers fled, leaving their motorcycles behind. An armed robbery was already underway when an off-duty police officer noticed trouble. Three young robbers were threatening the victims, and one of them was holding a gun. Before the situation could get any worse, the officer stepped in with his own firearm drawn. The sudden appearance of an armed authority figure changed everything. One robber immediately dropped to the ground and surrendered. Another abandoned his partners and ran away. The officer kept his weapon trained on the suspects, ordering them to stay down while scanning for more threats. He carefully searched one suspect and kept a distance to stay safe. While waiting for on-duty officers, the cop maintained control of the scene alone. Backup eventually arrived and took custody of the suspects. No shots were fired, but the robbery ended instantly. In Fortaleza, Brazil, a helmeted thief ran up and grabbed a cell phone from a man standing outside of a shop. He jumped onto his motorcycle and tried to escape. Suddenly, a bystander inside the shop grabbed the nearest object he could find, an entire roast chicken, and threw it at the thief. The chicken struck the robber, causing him to lose his balance. At the same time, a woman stepped outside holding a gun and fired shots to scare him away. The thief dropped the phone in panic. People rushed into the street as the woman pointed her firearm to control the scene. Several bystanders tried to knock the motorcycle over to stop the robber from escaping. Eventually, the thief managed to flee, but the stolen phone was recovered. Inside a cell phone repair shop in Prana, a man wearing a helmet walked in and calmly announced a robbery. One of the store owners was a licensed private citizen who legally carried a firearm. He stayed seated and quiet, watching the robber carefully instead of reacting fast. When the robber looked away, the owner drew his gun discreetly from below the counter. The robber raised his weapon, but the owner fired first. Multiple shots were fired, and the robber was hit several times before collapsing to the floor. Despite being seriously wounded, the robber survived and was later charged. No other customers were hurt during the incident. On a Brazilian street, a thief suddenly grabbed a woman's bag and tried to run away. A nearby man noticed the theft and immediately decided to intervene. He sprinted after the robber and closed the distance quickly before the thief could escape. Using a clean double-leg takedown, he drove the attacker to the ground with force. Once on the ground, the defender stayed calm and controlled the situation using his body weight and leg pressure. He moved into a knee-on belly position, keeping the robber from getting up. The defender then transitioned into an arm lock, forcing the robber to stop resisting. The stolen bag was recovered and handed back, and the defender calmly walked away, leaving the scene without celebrating or escalating the situation further. A man waited on his motorcycle outside a shop when a robber suddenly approached from the side holding a large knife. The attacker stood close and demanded the motorcycle, wallet, and phone while waving his blade. The victim stayed still and handed over his belongings, trying not to provoke the robber. The situation remained tense as the robber struggled to control both the stolen items and the motorcycle at the same time. As the victim prepared to leave, another man appeared from the left side and pulled out a gun. Without warning, he fired multiple shots toward the fleeing robber. The motorcyclist immediately accelerated away from the danger. It was unclear whether the shots hit anyone, but the gunfire created a serious risk for everyone nearby. The moment showed how a robbery can suddenly escalate into a life-threatening situation within seconds. A driver in Sao Paulo, Brazil, was the victim of an attempted robbery while stopped in traffic. A motorcycle rider pulled up beside his car and attempted to snatch items from him. During the struggle, the driver was able to take the weapon from the would-be robber and fire his own gun at the attacker. The robber was struck multiple times and later died from his wounds at a hospital. No one else was harmed in the shooting, only the thief who succumbed to his injuries.